the crashing of waves against a wooden hull, the sound of creaking timbers swaying with the wind, and the smell of salt in the air. These are the sensations that evoke life aboard the great ships of the Golden Age of Piracy. Between 1650 and 1730, pirates ruled the seas with a combination of fierce determination, unmatched seamanship, and sheer opportunism. This was the time of legendary figures whose names still evoke awe and intrigue centuries later. Blackbeard, Captain Kidd, Bartholomew Roberts, Anne Bonny, and countless others. This period, known as the Golden Age of Piracy, was fueled by global expansion, colonization, and international trade. European powers, including Britain, Spain, France, and Portugal, sought to extract the riches of the New World, gold, silver, spices, and other valuable resources, through vast fleets of merchant ships crossing the Atlantic and Caribbean seas. However, the abundance of these goods made ships easy targets for those willing to live outside the law. The seas became a battleground, not only for legitimate governments, but also for those who sought their fortunes through force. Pirates thrived in this maritime world, preying on merchant vessels and often eluding capture due to their intimate knowledge of the seas and their ability to navigate treacherous waters. The Caribbean, with its maze of islands, hidden coves, and relatively light naval presence, became a pirate's paradise. Ports like Nassau and Tortuga became infamous pirate havens, providing safe harbors where captains could repair their ships, sell stolen goods, and recruit new crew members. This age was not just about plunder. Pirates lived by their own codes, governed by loose but egalitarian rules that made a pirate life appealing to many. The ships were often more democratic than the societies from which they came, with crews electing captains and deciding together how to divide their plunder. For many, the life of a pirate offered a kind of freedom unavailable on land, free from the strict class structures and poverty that plagued much of Europe. In this story, we will set sail into the heart of the Golden Age of Piracy, exploring the lives of these infamous pirates, their ships, the battles they fought, the treasures they sought, and the lasting legacy they left behind. As the sun sets on the horizon and the stars come out to guide us, we'll navigate the turbulent seas of history and drift into the world of pirates and their golden age. From the hidden islands of the Caribbean to the fierce naval battles fought across the Atlantic, this journey will immerse you in the world of legendary figures, daring escapades, and the untold mysteries of the open ocean. Chapter 1. The Birth of the Golden Age of Piracy. The story of the Golden Age of Piracy begins in the aftermath of European conflicts that spanned the 16th and early 17th centuries. The rise of piracy can be traced back to the lucrative trade routes established by European colonial powers, particularly Spain and England, who were bringing back massive wealth from the New World. But just as global trade expanded, so did the opportunities for those willing to take it by force. In the early days of colonization, European governments often commissioned privateers to attack enemy ships. Privateers were essentially pirates with permission, granted by letters of marque that allowed them to capture ships and plunder enemy cargo legally during wartime. These privateers operated with the backing of their respective governments, keeping a portion of the loot for themselves while delivering the rest to their sovereigns. Figures like Sir Francis Drake were celebrated for their roles in disrupting Spanish treasure fleets as privateers. However, once the wars between European powers started to subside, these privateers found themselves unemployed. Many turned to full-fledged piracy, abandoning the legal framework that had once governed their raids. By the mid-17th century, the Caribbean became a hot spot for pirates, as the seas were filled with Spanish galleons carrying gold, silver, and other goods from the New World back to Europe. The region was dotted with hundreds of islands, each providing ample hiding places for pirate ships to evade the authorities. What made this time ripe for piracy was the fact that many governments, though officially opposed to piracy, turned a blind eye to it as long as it did not directly interfere with their interests. Spain, Britain, France, and the Netherlands all had colonies in the Caribbean, and tensions between them created opportunities for pirates to thrive. Some colonial governors even welcomed pirates, who boosted local economies with the goods they brought in. Port Royal in Jamaica and Tortuga off the coast of Haiti became notorious pirate havens, where the line between legitimate trade and piracy often blurred. At the height of piracy's golden age, the Caribbean and Atlantic Oceans were rife with targets. Spain had established lucrative mining operations in South America, particularly in Peru and Mexico, sending regular shipments of precious metals back to Europe. These treasure-laden ships were slow and heavily burdened, making them ideal targets for swift pirate vessels. Pirates also preyed on merchant ships carrying sugar, rum, and spices from the Caribbean islands. But piracy was not confined to the Caribbean. The Atlantic coast of North America and even the Indian Ocean saw a rise in pirate activity. Pirates like Henry Every and William Kidd extended their reach to East Asia and the Middle East, raiding ships from India, the Ottoman Empire, and beyond. This global reach of piracy meant that no shipping lane was entirely safe from attack. The combination of global trade, dwindling naval oversight, and the leftover privateers from European wars created the perfect conditions for piracy to flourish. Pirates not only sought riches, but also freedom from the strict social hierarchies of European society. For many sailors, life aboard a pirate ship offered more equality and a chance to escape the rigid class structures that had dominated their lives on land. This era laid the groundwork for some of the most notorious pirates in history, as men and women alike flocked to the seas in search of wealth, adventure, and a different kind of life. It was during this time that the seeds of legend were planted, as pirates like Blackbeard, Captain Kidd, and Anne Bonny would become household names, their exploits immortalized in the annals of history. Chapter 2. Life on the High Seas. Life aboard a pirate ship was an experience unlike any other, a strange mix of danger, camaraderie, and lawlessness that drew men and women from all walks of life. While pirates were undoubtedly outlaws, they also formed tight-knit communities governed by their own sets of rules, often more egalitarian than the societies they had left behind. The average pirate ship was a world unto itself. These ships were smaller and faster than the heavily laden merchant vessels they preyed upon, designed for speed and agility. Most pirate ships were either sloops or brigantines, nimble vessels that could outmaneuver larger naval ships and swiftly approach their targets before launching an attack. The deck of a pirate ship was always a hive of activity. Sails needed constant adjusting to catch the wind. The lookout kept a sharp eye on the horizon for potential prey, and the crew worked tirelessly to keep the ship seaworthy in often harsh conditions. Pirates lived in a world of constant motion. The rocking of the ship never ceased, and pirates became accustomed to sleeping in hammocks strung up in the lower decks, swaying in rhythm with the sea. The sound of the wind whipping through the sails, the creaking of wood, and the constant crash of waves were a part of daily life. a backdrop to the endless work that kept the ship afloat and on course. The daily life of a pirate was harsh and often monotonous, punctuated by moments of intense action when an enemy ship was spotted. Pirates spent long stretches of time at sea, constantly in search of plunder. Food was often scarce, and what they had was far from appetizing. Hardtack, a type of dry biscuit, and salted meat were staples, though fresh water and vegetables were precious commodities that quickly spoiled. Pirates would go ashore whenever possible to restock supplies, sometimes raiding coastal villages to obtain what they needed. Hygiene was practically non-existent on pirate ships. With no fresh water for bathing, pirates relied on salt water to clean themselves, if they bothered at all. Illness and injury were common, with the lack of proper medical care often leading to infection or death. Scurvy, caused by a lack of vitamin C, was rampant, and simple injuries could easily become life-threatening in such unsanitary conditions. However, for all its hardships, life aboard a pirate ship had its appeals. Pirates lived outside the constraints of traditional society, and many pirate ships operated as floating democracies. Crews often had the power to vote on important decisions, including the election of their captains and the division of plunder. While captains held authority during battles, they were typically elected by the crew and could be removed if they lost the crew's confidence. This was a stark contrast to the rigid hierarchies of naval or merchant ships, where captains held absolute authority, and sailors had little recourse for mistreatment. Pirates also shared their loot equally, or at least more fairly than on other ships. Once a ship was captured, the plunder was divided according to a set of agreed-upon rules. The pirate code, which varied from ship to ship, outlined the share each crew member would receive, with the captain typically taking a larger portion, but not disproportionately so. Injured pirates were often compensated with additional shares, particularly if they lost a limb in battle. This sense of brotherhood and fairness, along with the potential for great wealth, drew men and women from all over the world to piracy. Pirates were a diverse group, often made up of escaped slaves, deserters, and those fleeing the law. They came from different countries and backgrounds, but on board a pirate ship, they were united by a common cause, the pursuit of freedom and fortune. Despite the romanticized view of pirate life, it was not without its brutalities. Discipline could be harsh, and punishment for disobedience was severe. One of the most feared punishments was marooning, where a pirate would be abandoned on a deserted island with little more than a flask of water and a pistol. Death by starvation or exposure was almost certain, though a few marooned pirates survived to tell their tales. Flogging was also common for lesser offenses, and mutiny was punishable by death. The constant threat of naval patrols and rival pirate crews added to the danger. Pirates had to be vigilant, always on the lookout for approaching ships, whether they were potential targets or enemies hunting them down. The life of a pirate was one of constant risk, but for many the rewards outweighed the dangers. The promise of freedom, adventure, and the possibility of great wealth lured countless sailors to the pirate life, despite the many hardships they faced. Chapter 3. The Pirate Code. Laws of the Sea. Pirates, despite their lawless reputation, operated under strict rules and guidelines aboard their ships, often more equitable and fair than those found on legitimate naval or merchant vessels. These rules were known as the Pirate Code, a set of laws that governed everything from the division of plunder to the behavior of crew members. The pirate code was critical in maintaining order, discipline, and fairness among what were often diverse and unruly crews. In a world where survival depended on cooperation, these laws helped pirates navigate not only the seas, but also the complex social dynamics aboard their ships. One of the most famous pirate codes was that of Bartholomew Roberts, also known as Blackbeard, who was one of the most successful pirates of the Golden Age. Roberts' code, like many others, focused on the fair division of loot, maintaining discipline, and ensuring the safety of the crew. It served as a kind of contract that each pirate agreed to before joining the crew, and breaking the code could result in harsh punishments, including marooning or death. The pirate code emphasized equality in the division of treasure. After a successful raid, the loot was carefully counted and distributed according to the agreed-upon shares. While the captain and officers received a larger portion, each crew member was guaranteed a share of the spoils, often a much more generous one than they would have received on a merchant or naval ship. This system of fair distribution made piracy an attractive alternative to life in the traditional navy, where sailors were often underpaid and overworked. Here's an example of the articles from Bartholomew Roberts' Pirate Code. Article 1. Every man has a vote in affairs of the moment, has equal title to the fresh provisions or strong liquors at any time seized, and may use them at pleasure unless a scarcity makes it necessary, for the good of all, to vote a retrenchment. Article 2. Every man is to be called fairly in turn by list on board the prizes, because over and above their proper share they are allowed a shift of clothes. But if they defraud the company to the value of even $1 in plate, jewels, or money, marooning was their punishment. Article 4. No person to game at cards or dice for money. Article 8. The lights and candles to be put out at 8 o'clock at night. If any of the crew, after that hour, still remained inclined for drinking, they were to do it on the open deck. Article 11. The musicians to have rest on the Sabbath day, but the other 6 days and nights, none without special favor. The code also enforced discipline and prohibited activities that could threaten the well-being of the crew. Gambling, for instance, was often banned, as it could lead to disputes and conflicts among pirates. Fighting among crew members was strictly prohibited, and disputes were settled through either arbitration or, in some cases, duels conducted on shore to avoid endangering the ship. This helped maintain a semblance of order, and avoided the kinds of internal divisions that could lead to mutiny. One of the most fascinating aspects of the pirate code was its democratic nature. On many pirate ships, major decisions, such as where to sail or which ship to attack, were made by a vote of the crew, with each pirate having an equal say in the matter. This was in stark contrast to the rigid hierarchy found on naval ships, where sailors had little or no input into the decisions made by their captains. Pirate crews also had the power to elect and remove their captains, ensuring that leadership was based on merit and popularity rather than birth or rank. The captain held authority during battles and raids, but outside of combat, he was often subject to the will of the crew. This balance of power ensured that the captain remained accountable to his crew and acted in their best interests. If a captain was seen as cowardly or too harsh, he could be removed from his position, and another pirate would be elected to take his place. Discipline, while less brutal than on naval ships, was still enforced through harsh punishments for those who broke the code. One of the most feared punishments was marooning, where a pirate would be abandoned on a deserted island with little more than a flask of water and a pistol with one shot. This punishment was reserved for serious offenses such as theft or betrayal, and it was seen as a slow and torturous death, though a few marooned pirates managed to survive long enough to be rescued by passing ships. Another form of punishment was flogging, which was a common method of discipline for less severe offenses. Pirates who disobeyed orders or caused disruptions could be tied to the mast and whipped in front of the crew as a deterrent to others. Despite the harshness of these punishments, the pirate code was generally respected, as it provided a framework for fairness and survival in the dangerous world of piracy. The pirate code also took care of injured pirates, an unusual practice for the time. Pirates who were wounded in battle often received compensation in the form of extra shares of loot, particularly if they lost a limb. This practice encouraged loyalty among the crew, as pirates knew that they would be taken care of if they were injured while serving the ship. In essence, the pirate code was a social contract that ensured pirates worked together toward their common goals. It maintained order in a chaotic environment and allowed pirate ships to function as efficient, autonomous communities. The code was not just about loot. It was about survival, cooperation, and maintaining a sense of justice among those who had chosen to live outside the law. The concept of the pirate code, with its emphasis on equality and democracy, has contributed to the romanticized view of pirates as rebels who rejected the oppressive systems of their time in favor of a more free and just way of life. While the reality of piracy was often brutal, the pirate code provided a glimpse into the alternative societies pirates created aboard their ships, where the principles of fairness, loyalty, and shared risk held a sway over the cutthroat realities of the sea. Chapter 4. The Caribbean, Pirates' Paradise. The Caribbean Sea, with its sparkling blue waters, countless islands, and bustling trade routes, was the epicenter of the Golden Age of Piracy. This region, known for its natural beauty, was also a place of intense conflict and opportunity, where pirates found the perfect environment to thrive. The Caribbean offered everything a pirate could need: rich merchant ships, hidden coves for safe harbors, and weak colonial governments unable to effectively police the waters. During the 17th and 18th centuries, the Caribbean was a crossroads of global trade. Spanish galleons, loaded with treasure from the mines of South America, sailed regularly between the New World and Europe, carrying gold, silver, and precious gems. These heavily laden ships were prime targets for pirates, who could attack and plunder them before disappearing into the maze of islands and inlets that dotted the region. But it wasn't just Spanish ships that attracted pirates. The Caribbean was home to French, Dutch, and English colonies, each with its own fleet of merchant ships carrying sugar, rum, spices, and other valuable goods. Pirates had no loyalty to any particular nation, and would attack any ship they believed carried treasure. The frequent wars between European powers only added to the chaos, as privateers turned pirates found themselves without government backing, but with a wealth of experience in naval combat. The Caribbean's geography made it an ideal location for piracy. With more than 7,000 islands, islets, and reefs, it provided endless opportunities for pirates to evade capture. Many islands were uninhabited, offering safe harbors where pirates could hide their ships, divide their loot, and rest before embarking on their next raid. Even the inhabited islands often lacked strong defenses, and colonial governors were more focused on protecting their settlements from rival European powers than from pirates. One of the most notorious pirate havens in the Caribbean was the island of Tortuga, located off the coast of Hispaniola, modern-day Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Tortuga became a pirate stronghold in the early 17th century, when French and English pirates established a base there. The island's strategic location near key shipping routes made it an ideal base for launching raids on Spanish ships, and its natural harbors provided shelter from storms and enemy patrols. Tortuga's reputation as a pirate haven grew as more pirates flocked to the island, drawn by the promise of easy wealth and relative freedom. The island's population was a mix of pirates, smugglers, escaped slaves, and adventurers, all living outside the control of European governments. Tortuga's governor, Jean Levasseur, even built a fortress to protect the island's pirate inhabitants from Spanish attacks, further solidifying its status as a pirate sanctuary. While Tortuga was a key pirate stronghold in the early days of the Golden Age, it was eventually eclipsed by Nassau, a port town in the Bahamas that became the most infamous pirate haven of the 18th century. Nassau's location on the island of New Providence made it the perfect base for pirates operating in the Caribbean and the North Atlantic. With its deep-water harbor and proximity to major shipping lanes, Nassau became a bustling pirate republic, where outlaws could trade their plunder, repair their ships, and recruit new crew members. Nassau's lawlessness reached its peak in the early 18th century when the island's governor fled, leaving the pirates in control. For a brief period, Nassau operated as a self-governed pirate haven, with notorious figures like Blackbeard, Charles Vane, and Calico Jack calling the port home. Pirates roamed the streets freely, and the town's economy thrived on the sale of stolen goods. In Nassau, the lines between legitimate trade and piracy were often blurred. Merchants willing to deal with pirates could purchase valuable goods at a fraction of their market value, and many colonial officials turned a blind eye to the pirate activity in exchange for a share of the loot. For the pirates, Nassau was a paradise where they could live free from the constraints of society and the law, at least for a time. The Caribbean's colonial powers, particularly the Spanish, made repeated attempts to stamp out piracy, but the region's geography made it difficult to enforce any kind of lasting order. Pirate ships, designed for speed and maneuverability, could easily evade the larger, slower naval vessels sent to capture them. The islands themselves provided endless hiding places, and pirates often had the support of local populations who benefited from the goods and money they brought to the region. The Bahamas, Cuba, Hispaniola, and countless other islands became regular stops for pirates, who would resupply their ships, repair damage, and trade stolen goods before heading out on their next voyage. These islands were often home to small fishing villages or plantations, where pirates could easily blend in and disappear from view when naval patrols passed by. In this vast, tropical world, pirates ruled the waves, creating their own societies and shaping the course of history. The Caribbean, with its sun-drenched beaches and crystal-clear waters, may have seemed like a paradise, but for the pirates who sailed its seas, it was a battleground, a place where fortune, freedom, and danger were ever present, and where the line between life and death was as thin as the horizon. Chapter 5. The Most Notorious Pirates. The Golden Age of Piracy produced some of the most infamous figures in maritime history, whose names still echo across the centuries, shrouded in legend, myth, and fact. These pirates were not merely outlaws, they were charismatic, ruthless, and larger-than-life personalities who forged their own destinies on the high seas. Their exploits, daring raids, and dramatic ends helped shape the image of piracy that remains deeply ingrained in popular culture today. In this chapter, we explore the lives of some of the most notorious pirates of the Golden Age, uncovering the truth behind their fearsome reputations. Perhaps the most infamous pirate of them all, Blackbeard, whose real name was Edward Teach, or Thatch, was a figure of terror both in life and in death. His fearsome appearance, long, braided black beard, often with fuses of slow-burning hemp lit at the ends during battle, making him appear to be a demon wreathed in smoke, added to his reputation as one of the most dangerous men on the seas. Blackbeard began his career as a privateer during the War of the Spanish Succession, but, like many, he turned to full-fledged piracy once the war ended. He quickly became notorious for his ruthless tactics and intimidating presence, which often allowed him to capture ships without even firing a shot. His flagship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, was a former French slave ship that he heavily armed, transforming it into a floating fortress with 40 cannons. One of Blackbeard's most audacious acts occurred in 1718, when he blockaded the port of Charleston, South Carolina, holding the city hostage and demanding medical supplies for his crew. The blockade was so successful that Blackbeard managed to extort a large ransom from the city without firing a single cannonball. Despite his reputation for brutality, Blackbeard was known to be a strategic thinker who preferred to use fear as his primary weapon. His terrifying appearance and reputation often led his enemies to surrender without a fight, allowing him to take what he wanted with minimal bloodshed. However, when forced into battle, Blackbeard was as ruthless as they came. Blackbeard's reign of terror came to an end in November 1718, when he was tracked down by Lieutenant Robert Maynard of the British Royal Navy. In a fierce battle off the coast of Ocracoke Island, North Carolina, Blackbeard was killed after receiving numerous gunshots and sword wounds. Maynard later displayed Blackbeard's severed head on the bow of his ship as a warning to other pirates. Despite his death, Blackbeard's legend grew, and he remains one of the most iconic figures in the history of piracy. The story of Captain Kidd is one of the most famous, yet most tragic, in the annals of piracy. Unlike many pirates of the Golden Age, William Kidd started his career as a legitimate privateer, commissioned by the English government to hunt down pirates in the Indian Ocean. Born in Scotland, Kidd sailed for many years as a successful privateer, capturing enemy ships and earning a respectable reputation. However, his fortunes took a dark turn when he was accused of turning to piracy himself. In 1695, Kidd was commissioned by a group of English investors, including Lord Bellomont, to attack French ships and pirates preying on British trade in the Indian Ocean. With their backing, he set sail aboard his ship, the Adventure Galley, which was well armed and manned by a large crew. Initially, Kidd adhered to his privateer commission, but as time passed, tensions arose between him and his crew, who grew restless when legitimate targets proved scarce. In 1698, Kidd's crew forced him into piracy, and he attacked the Quedagh Merchant, an Armenian ship sailing under a French pass. The ship was carrying valuable goods, and Kidd's decision to seize it marked the point of no return. When word of Kidd's actions reached England, he was branded a pirate, despite his attempts to justify his actions as being within the bounds of his privateer commission. Kidd returned to the American colonies, hoping to clear his name, but he was arrested in Boston and sent to London to stand trial. His trial was highly publicized, and despite his insistence that he had only attacked legitimate targets, Kidd was convicted of piracy and murder. In 1701, he was hanged at Execution Dock in London. His body was left to rot in a gibbet as a warning to others, but the legend of Captain Kidd's buried treasure has endured, inspiring countless treasure hunters. Kidd's story is a complex one, and historians still debate whether he was truly guilty of piracy or merely a victim of circumstance. What is certain is that his trial and execution helped fuel the romantic image of the pirate, complete with buried treasure and high seas adventure. Piracy was not solely the domain of men. Two of the most notorious pirates of the Golden Age were Anne Bonny and Mary Red, both of whom disguised themselves as men to sail alongside their male counterparts. Their stories stand out in the male-dominated world of piracy, where women were typically considered bad luck on ships and often banned from sailing. Anne Bonny was born in Ireland in the late 17th century, but she moved to the Carolinas with her father as a child. She married a small-time pirate, but soon became involved with the notorious pirate Calico Jack Rackham. Anne disguised herself as a man to join Rackham's crew and quickly gained a reputation for her fearlessness in battle. She fought alongside the male pirates and was known for her ferocity and skill with a sword. Mary Red also disguised herself as a man for much of her life. Born in England, she joined the British military while posing as a man, and later became a pirate after being captured by Rackham's crew. Like Anne, Mary was known for her bravery and was highly respected by her fellow pirates. The two women became close companions, and their presence on Rackham's ship was a source of great intrigue and speculation. In 1720, Rackham's ship was captured by a pirate hunting vessel off the coast of Jamaica. While the male pirates were too drunk to fight, Anne Bonny and Mary Red stood their ground and fought fiercely, but they were ultimately overpowered and captured. Rackham and his crew were sentenced to death, but both women claimed to be pregnant, delaying their executions. Mary Red died of a fever in prison, while Anne Bonny's fate remains a mystery, with some accounts suggesting she was eventually released and lived out her days in obscurity. Anne Bonny and Mary Red's stories have since become legendary, symbolizing defiance against societal norms and the power of women to fight and lead alongside men in the brutal world of piracy. Another towering figure of the Golden Age of piracy was Bartholomew Roberts, known as Black Bart, who was arguably the most successful pirate of the era in terms of sheer plunder. Roberts captured over 400 ships during his career, making him one of the most prolific pirates in history. Born in Wales, Roberts initially served as a mate on a slaver ship before being forced into piracy in 1719 when his ship was captured by the pirate Howell Davis. Roberts quickly rose through the ranks and became captain after Davis was killed. He adopted the pirate life with enthusiasm, combining his skill as a navigator with ruthless efficiency. Roberts's success was due in part to his strict enforcement of the pirate code. He was a disciplined leader who maintained order among his crew, and was known for his elaborate personal style, often dressing in fine clothes and jewelry. Despite his flamboyance, Roberts was a fearsome pirate, attacking ships throughout the Caribbean, the West African coast, and even as far as the North American Atlantic. Roberts' reign of terror came to an end in 1722 when he was killed in a battle with the British warship HMS Swallow off the coast of Cape Lopez. His death marked the decline of the Golden Age of piracy, but his legacy as one of the most successful and fearsome pirates lives on. Chapter 6. Pirate Ships and Flags. At the heart of every pirate's success lay their ship, a floating fortress, their home, and their weapon in the high-stakes game of maritime plunder. Pirate ships were more than just vessels. They were carefully chosen tools of piracy, designed or modified to outmaneuver, outgun, and overwhelm their prey. In this chapter, we'll dive deep into the anatomy of a pirate ship, the different types of vessels pirates used, and the infamous flags that struck terror into the hearts of sailors who saw them on the horizon. Pirate ships were not the lumbering, heavily armed warships used by navies, nor were they the large, slow-moving merchant ships that they preyed upon. Pirates favored speed, agility, and surprise, which meant their ships had to be fast, nimble, and lightly armed, but well suited for swift raids. A pirate ship needed to catch its prey quickly, often in open waters, strike hard, and get away before any naval forces could respond. The pirates' ability to outmaneuver their slower, more heavily armed targets was one of their greatest strengths. The most common pirate ships were sloops, brigantines, and schooners, all of which had distinctive features that made them ideal for piracy. Sloops were single-masted ships, typically smaller and faster than larger vessels. Their shallow draft allowed them to sail in shallow waters, making it easy for pirates to hide in coves, estuaries, and rivers, avoiding detection by larger naval ships. Sloops were popular with pirates because of their speed and ease of handling. Blackbeard's infamous ship, the Revenge, was a modified sloop. Brigantines were two-masted ships with square sails on the front mast and fore and aft sails on the rear mast. Brigantines offered a good balance of speed and firepower, and they were frequently used by pirates who needed to carry larger crews and more cannons than a sloop could accommodate. Captain Kidd's Adventure Galley was a famous brigantine, heavily armed but still swift enough for pirate raids. Schooners were lightweight ships with 2 or more masts. Like sloops, they were favored for their speed and shallow draft, but schooners could carry more cargo and cannons than sloops. Calico Jack Rackham and his crew sailed on a schooner, which allowed them to evade capture for some time. Pirate ships were typically fast because they needed to outrun heavily armed warships that patrolled the seas to hunt pirates. However, a pirate ship's speed alone wasn't enough. Pirate crews also relied on surprise. They would approach merchant ships flying the flag of a friendly nation, only to reveal their true intentions at the last moment. The smaller size of pirate ships allowed them to get close to their targets without being detected until it was too late for the victim to escape. Once aboard a captured ship, pirates wasted no time. They plundered goods, weapons, and supplies quickly before disappearing into the open ocean. Unlike naval ships, pirates did not need to engage in prolonged battles. Their primary goal was to overwhelm their prey as swiftly as possible, take what they needed, and escape. Pirates relied heavily on their cannons to intimidate and disable other ships. The typical pirate ship, while not as heavily armed as a warship, still carried a formidable number of cannon, ranging in size and firepower. Pirate captains placed great emphasis on the strategic placement of their cannons to maximize their impact during a raid. Cannons were usually mounted on the broadside of the ship, allowing pirates to fire devastating volleys at the hull or rigging of an enemy ship, disabling it without completely destroying the valuable cargo. In addition to cannons, pirates were equipped with an array of hand weapons, including muskets, pistols, cutlasses, and boarding axes. These weapons were essential during boarding actions, when the pirates would swing or climb onto the enemy vessel to capture it. The cutlass, with its short, curved blade, was the preferred weapon for close combat due to its effectiveness in tight quarters. Muskets and pistols were used to fire at enemy crews before the boarding action, sowing confusion and fear. Many pirate ships also carried grappling hooks and boarding nets, tools used to pull enemy ships close enough to board. Once the two vessels were lashed together, the pirates would swarm onto the enemy ship, overwhelming the crew through sheer numbers and ferocity. Several pirate ships from the Golden Age of Piracy became as infamous as their captains. These ships, often modified for piracy, were both feared and respected by their prey. Queen Anne's Revenge. Perhaps the most infamous pirate ship, this was the flagship of Blackbeard. Originally a French slaving vessel, Blackbeard captured it in 1717 and armed it with 40 cannons, making it one of the most formidable pirate ships of its time. Blackbeard used the Queen Anne's Revenge to terrorize the Caribbean and blockade the port of Charleston before its eventual grounding near Beaufort Inlet, North Carolina. Adventure Galley. Commanded by Captain Kidd, the Adventure Galley was a well-armed brigantine with 34 cannons, designed for both speed and firepower. It was initially used as a privateer ship, but when Kidd turned to piracy, the Adventure Galley became a tool of terror in the Indian Ocean. The ship was eventually abandoned when it became too damaged to sail. Whydah Galley. The Whydah was a former slave ship captured by the pirate Samuel Bellamy, also known as Black Sam. Bellamy transformed the ship into his flagship, using it to capture dozens of other vessels. The Whydah became famous when it sank in a storm off the coast of Cape Cod in 1717, taking with it an immense fortune in plunder. The wreck was rediscovered in 1984, along with a vast treasure, making it the only authenticated pirate shipwreck ever discovered. Royal Fortune. This was the name Bartholomew Roberts, Black Bart, gave to several of his ships throughout his career. Roberts was one of the most successful pirates in history, capturing over 400 vessels, and his various ships named Royal Fortune were all heavily armed, some with up to 40 cannons. Robert's death aboard the last Royal Fortune marked the end of his reign as the most feared pirate of the Golden Age. One of the most enduring symbols of piracy is the pirate flag, commonly known as the Jolly Roger. These flags were not just symbols of rebellion, they were tools of psychological warfare, designed to strike fear into the hearts of those who saw them flying from the masts of pirate ships. Pirates understood the value of fear in their operations. If a ship's crew was too terrified to fight, they would often surrender without a single shot being fired, making the pirate's job far easier. The Jolly Roger was most often depicted as a skull and crossbones on a black background, but pirates used a wide variety of designs to distinguish themselves. Some flags featured skeletons, bleeding hearts, hourglasses, and weapons, all meant to convey the same message: surrender or face certain death. The black background symbolized death and mourning, while red flags, often flown during or after an attack, symbolized no quarter. That is, no mercy would be shown to those who resisted. Not all pirate flags were alike, and some famous pirates developed their own personalized flags. Blackbeard's flag featured a skeleton holding an hourglass in one hand and a spear in the other with a bleeding heart nearby. This image was intended to show that time was running out for those who dared defy him. Bartholomew Roberts' flag depicted a pirate standing with one foot on two skulls, representing his victories over Barbadian and Martiniquean ships. Roberts was known for his pride in his accomplishments, and his flag was meant to inspire fear in those who had heard of his exploits. Calico Jack Rackham's flag featured a skull with two crossed swords beneath it. This simple but effective design is one of the most recognizable pirate flags, and is often associated with the classic image of the Jolly Roger. These flags were raised just before pirates launched an attack, giving the enemy ship a final chance to surrender. If the crew of the targeted ship complied, they were usually spared, though they lost their cargo. If they resisted, the pirates would hoist the red flag and show no mercy. The ships and flags of the Golden Age of Piracy remain iconic symbols of freedom, rebellion, and terror. Pirate ships, swift and deadly, were the tools of their trade, enabling them to raid merchant ships and escape before naval forces could catch up. Their flags, flown high above their vessels, were symbols of the lawless life they had chosen, warning all who saw them that pirates were near. Though piracy's golden age ended centuries ago, the image of the pirate ship sailing the open seas, its black flag flapping in the wind, continues to capture the imagination. From novels and films to modern recreations, the pirate ship and the Jolly Roger remain potent symbols of defiance and adventure, evoking a time when the seas belonged to those brave enough to claim them. Chapter 7. Pirate Havens, Tortuga, and Nassau. In the vast expanses of the Caribbean and the Atlantic, pirate havens emerged as vital lifelines for the men and women who sailed under the black flag. These lawless ports were essential to pirate operations, offering places to rest, resupply, trade their ill-gotten gains, and escape the authorities. Two of the most infamous pirate strongholds were Tortuga and Nassau, both of which became synonymous with piracy during the Golden Age. In this chapter, we delve into the histories of these pirate havens, exploring how they became the heart of pirate life and a symbol of defiance against the European powers. The island of Tortuga, located off the northern coast of Hispaniola, modern-day Haiti and the Dominican Republic, was one of the earliest pirate strongholds in the Caribbean. Tortuga's strategic location near the shipping lanes used by Spanish treasure fleets made it an ideal base for pirates looking to plunder the wealth being transported from the New World to Europe. In the early 17th century, Tortuga became a haven for French, English, and Dutch privateers who had been preying on Spanish ships during wartime. These privateers, often left without employment after conflicts ended, turned to piracy, and Tortuga offered the perfect sanctuary. The island's rugged coastline and natural harbors provided excellent hiding places for pirate ships, while its isolation from major Spanish settlements made it difficult to control. Tortuga quickly developed a reputation as a lawless island, where pirates could live freely and trade their plunder. The island's population was a mix of pirates, smugglers, escaped slaves, and settlers, all of whom benefited from the influx of wealth brought in by pirate raids. French and English colonists on the island often allied with the pirates, seeing them as a means of survival in a hostile environment where Spanish forces posed a constant threat. One of the key figures in the development of Tortuga as a pirate haven was Jean Levasseur, a French engineer and soldier who became the island's governor in 1640. Recognizing the potential of Tortuga as a stronghold, Levasseur constructed a fortress on the island to protect it from Spanish attacks. This fortress, known as Fort de Rocher, became a symbol of pirate defiance and helped Tortuga resist multiple attempts by the Spanish to reclaim the island. Under Levasseur's leadership, Tortuga became a thriving pirate republic. The island's population grew as more pirates flocked to its shores, drawn by the promise of wealth and freedom. Pirates used Tortuga as a base to launch raids on Spanish ships and settlements, returning to the island to sell their plunder and rest between voyages. In return, Local merchants and settlers provided the pirates with supplies, repairs for their ships, and a place to spend their earnings. Tortuga's reputation as a pirate haven grew, attracting the attention of European powers. By the late 17th century, the island had become a focal point in the struggle between France and Spain for control of the Caribbean. The French government, recognizing the usefulness of pirates in disrupting Spanish trade, offered letters of marque to many of the pirates based on Tortuga, legitimizing their activities as privateers. This blurred the line between piracy and privateering, as many pirates continued to operate independently while maintaining a veneer of legitimacy. Although Tortuga eventually lost its status as a major pirate stronghold as European powers asserted greater control over the Caribbean, its legacy as one of the first pirate havens remained. The island's lawless reputation and its role in the early days of the Golden Age of Piracy have made it an enduring symbol of pirate defiance and independence. While Tortuga was the pirate stronghold of the early 17th century, Nassau, the capital of the Bahamas, became the center of pirate activity during the late Golden Age. Located on the island of New Providence, Nassau offered an ideal base for pirates due to its proximity to the busy shipping lanes of the Caribbean and the Atlantic. With its deep-water harbor and access to trade routes leading to Europe, the Americas, and Africa, Nassau became a hub for pirates from all over the world. By the early 18th century, Nassau had fallen into lawlessness. The British, who claimed the Bahamas as a colony, had largely abandoned the island, leaving it vulnerable to attack by Spanish and French forces. This lack of control made Nassau an attractive destination for pirates, who could operate with little fear of government interference. Nassau quickly developed into a pirate republic, a self-governed community where pirates ruled the streets and the harbor. Some of the most notorious pirates of the Golden Age, including Blackbeard, Charles Vane, Calico Jack Rackham, and Anne Bonny, called Nassau home at one time or another. The town's economy revolved around piracy, with local merchants trading openly with pirates, buying and selling stolen goods without fear of reprisal. Nassau's harbor became a safe haven for pirate ships, where they could refit, repair, and restock supplies. Pirate crews would gather in the town's taverns and inns, spending their plundered wealth on rum, food, and entertainment. The atmosphere in Nassau was one of celebration and freedom, as pirates reveled in their ability to live outside the laws of the European empires. One of the key figures in Nassau's pirate republic was Benjamin Hornigold, a former privateer who became one of the most influential pirate captains in the Caribbean. Hornigold helped establish Nassau as a base for pirate operations, and he recruited and trained many pirates who would later become famous, including Blackbeard. Under Hornigold's leadership, Nassau became a center of pirate activity, with fleets of pirate ships launching raids on Spanish, French, and British merchant vessels. The height of Nassau's pirate republic came between 1715 and 1718, a period when the island was effectively ruled by pirates. Without any formal government, Nassau operated as a pirate democracy, where captains and crews made decisions by vote and shared their plunder equally. This period of lawlessness, however, was short-lived, as the British government grew increasingly concerned about the impact of piracy on its trade routes. In 1718, the British sent Wood-as Rogers, a former privateer, to Nassau as the newly appointed governor of the Bahamas, with orders to restore order and eliminate piracy. Rogers arrived with a fleet of warships and offered a royal pardon to any pirate who agreed to give up their criminal ways. Many pirates, including Hornigold, accepted the pardon and retired from piracy, while others, like Charles Vane and Blackbeard, refused to surrender. Roger's arrival marked the beginning of the end for Nassau's pirate republic. He established a fort and a garrison of soldiers to protect the town from pirate attacks, and began hunting down the remaining pirates who refused to accept the pardon. Over the next few years, Nassau was transformed from a lawless pirate haven into a legitimate British colony, bringing an end to its brief reign as the capital of piracy in the Caribbean. Life in pirate havens like Tortuga and Nassau was a chaotic mix of freedom, violence, and excess. Pirates enjoyed a level of independence and autonomy that was rare in the structured societies of Europe, where class divisions and strict laws governed daily life. In pirate havens, the traditional rules of society were often upended, with wealth, power, and influence determined not by birth or title, but by a pirate's success in plundering ships and capturing treasure. Taverns and inns in these pirate havens were lively and often dangerous places, where pirates gathered to spend their loot on food, drink, and entertainment. It was not uncommon for disputes to break out over stolen goods or shares of plunder, leading to brawls or even murders in the streets. However, for many pirates, these havens represented a rare opportunity to live free from the oppressive laws and rigid class structures of European society. Despite the lawlessness, there was also a sense of community among pirates in these havens. Pirates from different countries and backgrounds often came together in these ports, forming alliances and sharing information about potential targets. The common goal of plundering the wealth of the European empires created a bond among pirates that transcended national loyalties. In both Tortuga and Nassau, pirates lived on the edge of society, enjoying their fleeting moments of freedom and wealth, knowing that the forces of law and order were never far behind. These pirate havens were both refugees and battlegrounds, where pirates could escape the authorities, but were constantly at risk of betrayal, capture, or death. The pirate havens of Tortuga and Nassau have left an indelible mark on the history of piracy and the wider world. They were places where the rule of law was suspended, and pirates could live on their own terms, even if only for a short time. These havens became symbols of the pirate lifestyle: lawless, dangerous, but also free and independent. While the pirate havens eventually fell to the might of European powers, their legacy lives on in the stories, myths, and legends that have shaped our understanding of the Golden Age of Piracy. Today, the image of a pirate republic, where outlaws ruled the seas and lived by their own laws, continues to capture the imagination, reminding us of a time when the boundaries of society were tested and the seas were filled with adventure and danger. Chapter 8: Pirates versus the Navies: Battles on the High Seas. Piracy was not simply a game of theft, it was a battle for control over the world's wealthiest trade routes. As the pirate menace grew, so too did the efforts of the European powers to stamp it out. The Golden Age of Piracy was characterized by dramatic, often deadly confrontations between pirate crews and the naval forces sent to bring them to justice. These battles took place on the high seas, where ships would clash in desperate, often brutal encounters. In this chapter, we explore the tactics pirates used to evade or confront powerful navies, the famous naval commanders who hunted them, and the epic sea battles that marked the decline of piracy's golden age. One of the reasons pirates were able to elude capture for so long was their ability to use speed and surprise to their advantage. pirate ships, as we've seen, were smaller, faster, and more maneuverable than the heavily armed naval ships sent to capture them. This allowed pirates to evade larger warships by sailing into shallow waters or using narrow passages where their enemies could not follow. Pirates were masters of the sea, often knowing the local geography and winds better than the captains of the ships they attacked. When it came to attacking merchant ships, pirates relied on surprise and intimidation. They would often approach their target under false flags, pretending to be a friendly vessel until they were close enough to strike. At that moment, the pirate crew would raise their Jolly Roger or red flag, signaling their true intentions. The sudden appearance of a pirate flag was often enough to cause panic among the crew of a merchant ship, who knew that resistance could lead to their deaths or capture. Pirates preferred to avoid prolonged battles whenever possible. Their goal was not to destroy ships, but to capture them intact along with their valuable cargo. A quick, decisive boarding action was the most efficient way to take control of a ship. Pirates would use grappling hooks to pull the enemy ship alongside their own, then swarm aboard with pistols, muskets, and cutlasses drawn, overwhelming the crew before they had a chance to mount a serious defense. For the pirates, speed was key. The longer a battle lasted, the greater the risk that naval forces would arrive to reinforce the ship they were attacking. Pirates would strip the captured vessel of its valuables, gold, silver, spices, and other goods, before making their escape. They often scuttled or set fire to the captured ship, leaving little evidence of their attack behind. As piracy grew into a serious threat to global trade, European powers began to take more aggressive action. Naval patrols were increased along key shipping lanes, particularly in the Caribbean and Indian Oceans, where piracy was most rampant. The Royal Navy, along with Spanish, French, and Dutch fleets, was tasked with hunting down pirates and protecting merchant vessels. Naval ships sent to combat pirates were typically much larger and more heavily armed than the ships pirates used. These warships were equipped with multiple decks of cannons and carried well-trained sailors and marines, making them formidable opponents in a direct confrontation. However, their size and slower speed often put them at a disadvantage in the chase, and pirates would use their superior knowledge of local waters to outmaneuver them. One of the most effective tactics used by the navies was to send smaller, faster sloops or frigates after pirate ships. These vessels were better suited to the task of chasing down nimble pirate ships and could engage them in battle on more equal terms. Naval squadrons would often patrol together, allowing them to surround and trap pirates who might otherwise escape. The British Royal Navy was particularly determined to put an end to piracy in the Caribbean. They began sending pirate hunters, naval officers with a specific mission to track down and capture or kill notorious pirates. These officers were highly motivated, as the capture of a famous pirate often led to promotions, wealth, and fame. Among the most famous pirate hunters was Captain Woodes Rogers, who was instrumental in ending the Pirate Republic of Nassau. One of the most famous naval engagements of the Golden Age of Piracy was the death of Blackbeard in 1718. By this time, Blackbeard had established himself as one of the most feared pirates in the Caribbean, and his blockade of Charleston, South Carolina, had brought him to the attention of British authorities. In November 1718, Lieutenant Robert Maynard of the Royal Navy was dispatched by the governor of Virginia to capture or kill Blackbeard. Maynard commanded two small sloops, the Ranger and the Jane, which were better suited for the shallow waters where Blackbeard was hiding off the coast of Ocracoke Island, North Carolina. Maynard and his crew found Blackbeard anchored with a small fleet of pirate ships. Blackbeard, always ready for a fight, attempted to escape but was forced into battle when the Ranger and Jane caught up to him. The engagement that followed was brutal and bloody. Blackbeard's ship, the Adventure, was heavily armed, and the initial exchange of cannon fire was devastating to Maynard's forces. Many of Maynard's men were killed or wounded in the first volleys. However, Maynard had a plan. He ordered his surviving crew to hide below deck, giving the appearance that his ship had been disabled by Blackbeard's cannons. When Blackbeard and his pirates boarded the seemingly abandoned Jane, Maynard's men sprang from below deck and engaged the pirates in fierce hand-to-hand combat. Blackbeard, by all accounts, fought with ferocity and refused to surrender. He was reportedly shot 5 times and received more than 20 sword wounds before he finally fell. His death marked the end of one of the most feared pirates of the Golden Age. Maynard decapitated Blackbeard and displayed his severed head on the bow of his ship as a warning to other pirates. The death of Blackbeard was a significant victory for the Royal Navy and marked the beginning of the decline of piracy in the Caribbean. The story of Captain William Kidd is another famous example of a pirate's downfall at the hands of the Navy. Kidd had originally been commissioned by the British as a privateer, tasked with hunting pirates in the Indian Ocean. However, after capturing the Quedagh Merchant, a ship sailing under a French pass, Kidd was accused of piracy and became a fugitive. Kidd attempted to clear his name by returning to New York, but he was arrested and sent to London to stand trial. In a highly publicized case, Kidd was found guilty of piracy and murder, despite his protests that he had acted within the bounds of his privateer commission. In 1701, Kidd was hanged at Execution Dock, and his body was left to rot in a gibbet as a warning to other would-be pirates. The capture and execution of Captain Kidd was a major victory for the British government, which used his trial as an example to discourage others from turning to piracy. However, the question of whether Kidd was truly guilty of piracy or simply a scapegoat remains debated by historians. As the Golden Age of Piracy wore on, the European powers became increasingly determined to stamp out piracy for good. The rise of powerful naval fleets, combined with the strategic importance of trade, meant that pirates were no longer viewed as mere nuisances, but as threats to global commerce. Governments began offering pardons to pirates who were willing to give up their criminal ways, while at the same time stepping up military campaigns to hunt down those who refused. The presence of naval patrols in the Caribbean, the Indian Ocean, and along the coast of North America made it increasingly difficult for pirates to operate. Major pirate havens, such as Nassau and Port Royal, were brought under control by European powers, denying pirates the safe harbors they needed to resupply and repair their ships. Pirates who were captured were often hanged at Execution Dock in London or in other ports around the world. Their bodies were sometimes displayed in public as a warning to others, and the once feared pirate captains who had terrorized the seas were gradually hunted down and killed or forced into retirement. By the early 18th century, the Golden Age of Piracy was drawing to a close. The combined efforts of the navies of Britain, Spain, France, and the Netherlands had turned the tide against the pirates. As piracy became more dangerous and less profitable, many pirates accepted royal pardons and returned to a life of relative obscurity. Others, like Blackbeard and Charles Vane, fought to the bitter end, preferring death to surrender. The naval campaigns against pirates marked the end of an era but they also established the foundations for modern naval warfare and maritime law. The battle between pirates and the navies of Europe was not just a fight for control of the seas. It was a struggle over the future of global commerce and the rule of law on the high seas. Though the Golden Age of Piracy came to an end, the stories of those battles, the daring raids, the cunning escapes, and the bloody confrontations have left a lasting mark on maritime history. Pirates may have been outlaws, but their battles against the navies of the world became legendary, shaping the image of pirates as both rebels and rogues who dared to challenge the might of empires. Chapter 9. Treasures and Legends of Lost Gold. The allure of hidden treasure has been central to pirate lore since the very beginning. Stories of buried gold, jewels, and other riches left behind by the pirates of the Golden Age have fueled countless treasure hunts, inspired myths, and shaped the image of pirates in popular culture. While many of these tales are exaggerated or purely fictional, some are grounded in historical events that continue to fascinate treasure hunters and historians alike. In this chapter, we explore the most famous stories of pirate treasure, the legends that surround them, and the ongoing quest to find the riches that may still lie buried beneath the sands. One of the most enduring legends of pirate treasure is that of Captain William Kidd, and the vast fortune he is said to have buried before his capture. Kidd's story is unique because, unlike many other pirate legends, there is substantial historical evidence suggesting that Kidd did, in fact, hide part of his plunder. As a privateer turned pirate, Kidd operated in the Indian Ocean, where he seized several valuable ships, including the Quedagh Merchant, a vessel laden with silk, gold, silver, and other precious goods. Kidd knew that his actions had attracted the attention of British authorities, and as he sailed back to the American colonies, he reportedly decided to hide some of his treasure in hopes of bargaining for a pardon. According to legend, Kidd buried his treasure on Gardiner's Island, off the coast of Long Island, New York. The island was owned by John Gardiner, and Kidd allegedly entrusted some of his loot to Gardiner's safekeeping, believing that he could retrieve it later if he was able to clear his name. However, Kidd was arrested upon his arrival in Boston and never had the chance to recover the treasure. During his trial, Kidd admitted to burying treasure, but the exact location and the amount of wealth he had hidden remain a mystery. Some of the treasure on Gardiner's Island was reportedly recovered by British authorities, but rumors persisted that much more remained hidden. Over the centuries, treasure hunters have scoured the coastlines of Long Island, the Caribbean, and other potential hiding places, hoping to uncover Kidd's lost fortune. Despite numerous searches, Captain Kidd's treasure has never been conclusively found. The legend of his hidden wealth has inspired countless treasure hunters and continues to captivate the imagination of those who believe that the riches of one of history's most infamous pirates are still waiting to be discovered. The legend of Blackbeard's treasure is another tale that has captured the imagination of generations. Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard, was one of the most feared pirates of the Golden Age, and his reputation for ruthlessness and cunning was matched by rumors of the vast wealth he accumulated during his reign of terror in the Caribbean and along the American coastline. Blackbeard's flagship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, was a formidable vessel, and under his command, Blackbeard captured numerous ships and plundered their valuable cargo. By the time of his death in 1718, Blackbeard was believed to have amassed a fortune in gold, silver, and jewels. However, unlike some pirates who flaunted their wealth, Blackbeard was known for being secretive about the fate of his plunder. According to legend, Blackbeard buried his treasure on a remote island, swearing that only he and the devil knew where it was hidden. Some stories claim that Blackbeard scattered his treasure across multiple locations in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, where he was eventually killed in a battle with Lieutenant Robert Maynard of the Royal Navy. Other tales suggested that his treasure was hidden in the Bahamas, or even on islands further afield. Despite numerous attempts to find Blackbeard's treasure, it has never been recovered, and the exact location, if it exists at all, remains a mystery. The wreck of the Queen Anne's Revenge was discovered off the coast of North Carolina in 1996, and divers have recovered many artifacts from the ship, including cannons, tools, and weapons. However, no substantial treasure has been found at the wreck site, leaving the legend of Blackbeard's buried fortune alive and well. One of the most spectacular legends of pirate treasure involves the fabled Treasure of Lima, a vast fortune said to have been hidden by pirates after being stolen from the Spanish authorities. The story begins in 1820, when Spanish forces in Lima, Peru, were forced to evacuate the city in the face of a rebellion. Fearing that their treasures would fall into the hands of the revolutionaries, the Spanish entrusted the Treasure of Lima, a collection of gold, silver, jewels, and religious artifacts, worth an estimated $60 million in today's terms, to Captain William Thompson, the British captain of a ship called the Mary Dear. Thompson was supposed to transport the treasure to Mexico, but instead, he and his crew killed the Spanish guards and made off with the treasure. According to legend, Thompson sailed to the Cocos Islands off the coast of Costa Rica and buried the treasure there, intending to return for it later. However, Thompson and his crew were captured by the Spanish and executed, except for Thompson himself, who was spared after agreeing to reveal the location of the treasure. Despite this, Thompson managed to escape before leading the Spanish authorities to the treasure, and the exact location of the Treasure of Lima has never been discovered. Over the years, the Cocos Islands have been the site of numerous treasure hunting expeditions, with adventurers convinced that the Treasure of Lima is buried somewhere on the islands. Despite extensive searches, no trace of the treasure has been found, and the legend of the stolen riches continues to inspire treasure hunters to this day. The Legend of Oak Island. One of the most enduring and mysterious treasure legends in history is that of Oak Island, a small island off the coast of Nova Scotia, Canada. The story of Oak Island's treasure began in 1795, when a young man named Daniel McGinnis discovered a depression in the ground on the island, along with signs that the earth had been disturbed. Believing that the depression might indicate the presence of buried treasure, McGinnis and his friends began digging. As they dug deeper, they encountered layers of oak platforms, and the excavation became more challenging. After digging 30 feet, they abandoned the effort, but the legend of Oak Island's money pit was born. Over the next 2 centuries, numerous treasure hunters attempted to uncover the treasure believed to be hidden on Oak Island, but their efforts were often thwarted by flooding and collapses within the pit. Theories about the origin of the Oak Island treasure abound. Some believe that it is the hidden wealth of Captain Kidd or Blackbeard, while others speculate that it could be the lost treasure of the Knights Templar, the Holy Grail, or even Shakespeare's manuscripts. Despite numerous excavations and millions of dollars spent, no definitive treasure has ever been found, though some intriguing artifacts have been discovered, including coins, tools, and wooden structures. The mystery of Oak Island remains unsolved, and the search for its treasure continues to this day, with modern technology being employed to probe the depths of the money pit. The allure of hidden riches and the possibility of unlocking an ancient secret keep the legend alive, attracting treasure hunters and enthusiasts from around the world. In addition to these famous treasure legends, countless other stories of lost pirate gold and hidden wealth have persisted throughout the centuries. From the Florida Keys to the Bahamas and the Caribbean islands, tales of treasure hidden by pirates who were killed or captured before they could retrieve it have inspired generations of treasure hunters. Some legends are based on real historical events, such as the wreck of the Spanish treasure fleet in 1715, when a hurricane sank a convoy of Spanish galleons off the coast of Florida, scattering their precious cargo across the ocean floor. To this day, divers and treasure hunters continue to search for gold and silver coins from the wreck, many of which have been found, but much more remains hidden. Other legends are purely speculative, fueled by the romantic image of pirates as swashbuckling adventurers who buried their treasure on deserted islands, waiting for a time when they could return to claim it. While the reality of pirate life was often far less glamorous, the idea of buried treasure has endured, becoming one of the most enduring symbols of the Golden Age of Piracy. While the stories of buried pirate treasure have captured the public's imagination, the reality is that most pirates did not bury their loot. Pirate crews were often eager to spend their plunder as quickly as they could, and they had little reason to hide it when they could use it to buy supplies, food, and drink in pirate havens like Tortuga and Nassau. For most pirates, the goal was to live as lavishly as possible for as long as they could, knowing that their lives might be cut short by battle or the hangman's noose. However, the legends of buried treasure continue to inspire those who believe that somewhere, beneath the sands of a forgotten island or the depths of a flooded pit, the hidden wealth of pirates is still waiting to be found. Whether or not these treasures exist, the stories of lost gold and hidden riches remain an enduring part of pirate mythology, a testament to the enduring allure of adventure and the unknown. Chapter 10. The End of the Golden Age. By the early 18th century, the Golden Age of Piracy, the period when pirates ruled the high seas and terrorized shipping lanes, was drawing to a close. After decades of pirate raids, the governments of Europe began to take coordinated and aggressive action to eliminate the pirate threat once and for all. The combined efforts of the British Royal Navy, along with the navies of Spain, France, and the Netherlands, slowly strangled the life out of piracy. This chapter explores the factors that led to the decline of piracy, from the strategic military campaigns to the changing political and economic landscape, and the final fates of some of the most notorious pirates. The early 18th century was a time of significant political and economic change in the Atlantic world. The Treaty of Utrecht in 1713 had brought an end to the War of the Spanish Succession, stabilizing relations between the major European powers, Britain, France, Spain, and the Dutch Republic. As the wars between these empires ended, so too did the need for privateers. Legitimate pirates who had been sanctioned by their governments to attack enemy ships during wartime. Once the wars ended, many privateers were left without a legal means of earning a living, and some turned to piracy. However, the cessation of hostilities between the European powers also meant that they were no longer willing to tolerate the lawlessness of piracy, especially as they sought to protect their lucrative trade routes and colonial interests. The major empires of Europe began to focus on restoring order to the seas, where piracy had flourished for years due to the distractions of war. One of the most effective tools in the fight against piracy was the growing power of the British Royal Navy, which had become the dominant naval force in the Atlantic. As Britain expanded its empire and tightened its control over the Caribbean, the Indian Ocean, and the American coast, it began deploying warships to patrol key shipping lanes and pirate-infested regions. The British government also passed laws designed to crack down on piracy, offering pardons to pirates who surrendered and severe punishments to those who continued their criminal activities. In 1717, King George III issued a proclamation offering a royal pardon to any pirate who surrendered within a year. The hope was that many pirates, tired of living on the run and facing increasing pressure from naval forces, would choose to give up their outlaw ways in exchange for a pardon. The royal pardon was effective in convincing many pirates to retire, including notorious figures like Benjamin Hornigold, who accepted the pardon and became a pirate hunter, turning against his former comrades. However, some pirates, such as Charles Vane and Blackbeard, refused to surrender and continued their defiance, knowing that the price of being captured would be execution. One of the most important military campaigns against pirates was led by Wood Rogers, a former privateer turned pirate hunter. In 1718, Rogers was appointed the governor of the Bahamas and was tasked with bringing an end to the pirate Republic of Nassau, which had become a haven for some of the most notorious pirates of the Golden Age, including Blackbeard, Charles Vane, and Calico Jack Rackham. Rogers arrived in Nassau with a fleet of warships and quickly set about re-establishing British control over the island. He offered pardons to any pirate who surrendered, but made it clear that those who resisted would face severe consequences. Rogers fortified Nassau, established a permanent garrison, and began hunting down the pirates who refused to submit. The fall of Nassau marked the end of the most significant pirate stronghold in the Caribbean. Without a safe haven to return to, pirates found it increasingly difficult to resupply their ships, sell their plunder, and evade the growing presence of naval forces. Many pirates who had operated out of Nassau either accepted the royal pardon or fled to more remote regions, where they were hunted down by Rogers and his forces. Rogers' campaign was one of the most successful anti-piracy efforts of the Golden Age. By restoring order to Nassau, he effectively ended the pirate republic and forced many of the most dangerous pirates into retirement or to their deaths. Nassau, once the capital of piracy, became a legitimate British colony, and its pirate inhabitants were driven out or captured. While some pirates like Blackbeard met their end in battle, others were eventually captured and brought to trial. Two of the most infamous pirates of the Golden Age, Charles Vane and Calico Jack Rackham, both met their fates at the hands of British authorities. Charles Vane was a pirate known for his recklessness and violence, traits that set him apart from many other pirate captains who preferred to use intimidation rather than brute force. Vane had been one of the few pirates who refused to accept the royal pardon offered by Woodes Rogers, and he continued his pirate activities despite increasing pressure from the British Navy. Vane's luck ran out in 1719 when his ship was wrecked on an island in the Caribbean. Stranded and without a crew, Vane was captured by a passing ship and taken to Jamaica, where he was put on trial for piracy. Vane was found guilty and hanged in Port Royal, one of the most notorious pirate towns in the Caribbean, bringing an end to his violent and tumultuous career. Calico Jack Rackham was another pirate who became famous during the Golden Age, not just for his exploits but for the presence of two women, Anne Bonny and Mary Red, among his crew. Rackham operated in the waters around Jamaica and the Bahamas, where he plundered small merchant ships and lived the life of a swashbuckler. Rackham's downfall came in 1720, when he and his crew were attacked by a pirate hunting vessel sent by the governor of Jamaica. While many of his male crew members were too drunk to fight, Anne Bonny and Mary Red were among the few pirates who put up a defense. Despite their efforts, Rackham and his crew were captured, and Rackham was tried and hanged for piracy. His execution marked the end of one of the most colorful figures of the Golden Age of Piracy. As the military campaigns against pirates intensified, captured pirates were brought to trial and often executed in public ceremonies designed to serve as a warning to others. In London, Execution Dock became infamous as the site where pirates were hanged and their bodies displayed for the public to see. The British government wanted to send a clear message. Piracy would not be tolerated, and those who defied the law would meet a grim fate. One of the most infamous pirate executions was that of Captain Kidd, whose highly publicized trial and execution in 1701 helped set the tone for the crackdown on piracy in the years that followed. Kidd's body was left to rot in a gibbet along the Thames River, a stark reminder to all who passed by of the consequences of piracy. In the Caribbean, pirates were also executed in the port towns they had once terrorized. In Port Royal, Jamaica, a notorious pirate town that had been ravaged by an earthquake in 1692, many pirates met their end at the gallows. Their bodies were often displayed as warnings to other would-be pirates, left to hang in chains where sailors could see them as they entered the harbor. By the 1720s, piracy had become a far more dangerous occupation, and the days of the Golden Age were numbered. While a few pirates continued to operate in remote areas of the world, the combined efforts of the European navies, the establishment of colonial governments, and the execution of pirate captains brought an end to the era of pirate dominance. The decline of piracy was not only due to military force but also to changing economic conditions. By the mid-18th century, European empires had become more organized in their governance of the New World, and global trade routes were more heavily patrolled. The establishment of legitimate trade routes, combined with the expansion of naval power, made piracy less profitable and far more dangerous. In addition, new economic opportunities emerged in the colonies, offering former pirates a chance to reintegrate into society. Many pirates who had accepted royal pardons went on to become merchants, sailors, or even pirate hunters themselves, using their knowledge of the seas to help capture their former comrades. By the late 1720s, the Golden Age of Piracy had come to an end. While piracy would continue in various forms around the world, the romanticized era of the swashbuckling pirate, ruling the seas and defying empires, had passed into history. The Golden Age of Piracy, though short-lived, left a lasting legacy. Pirates of this era became the stuff of myth and legend, with stories of buried treasure, daring raids, and infamous captains passed down through generations. While the reality of pirate life was often harsh and violent, the image of the pirate as a symbol of freedom and rebellion has persisted in popular culture. The tales of pirates like Blackbeard, Captain Kidd, Anne Bonny, and Calico Jack continue to inspire novels, films, and television shows, ensuring that the Golden Age of Piracy remains a defining chapter in maritime history. Although the era of pirates ruling the seas has long since ended, their stories continue to capture the imagination, reminding us of a time when the boundaries of law and order were tested on the open ocean. Chapter 11. Pirates in Popular Culture. Long after the last pirate ships disappeared from the high seas, the image of the pirate has continued to captivate the public imagination. The Golden Age of Piracy may have ended in the 18th century, but pirates have lived on in literature, movies, television, and games, evolving from fearsome outlaws into romanticized adventurers. From classic novels like Treasure Island to modern-day blockbusters like Pirates of the Caribbean, pirates have become iconic figures in popular culture. In this chapter, we explore how the legacy of piracy has been transformed into entertainment, and how these larger-than-life characters continue to inspire audiences across the world. The first major pirate figure in popular culture appeared in literature. Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island, published in 1883, introduced readers to Long John Silver, one of the most enduring pirate characters of all time. Silver, with his one leg and pet parrot, became the archetype of the pirate villain. Charming yet dangerous, loyal yet treacherous, and motivated by greed above all else. Treasure Island popularized many of the pirate tropes we still associate with the genre today. Buried treasure, pirate maps marked with an X, and the image of the pirate captain as a charismatic rogue. Stevenson's novel was hugely influential, sparking a fascination with pirates that has endured for more than a century. Long John Silver became the template for future pirate characters, and Treasure Island set the standard for how pirates were portrayed in literature. The success of the novel was followed by a wave of pirate fiction, with authors capitalizing on the public's appetite for swashbuckling adventure on the high seas. In the early 20th century, J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan added another famous pirate to the pantheon, Captain Hook. Hook, the dandyish villain with a hook for a hand and a vendetta against Peter Pan, became one of the most famous pirate characters in children's literature. Barrie's play and subsequent novel cast Hook as both a fearsome pirate captain and a figure of comic relief, giving him a unique place in the pirate mythos. Hook's rivalry with the eternally youthful Peter Pan and his fear of the crocodile that swallowed his hand made him a memorable figure, further cementing the pirate archetype in popular culture. These early depictions of pirates in literature painted them as both villains and anti-heroes, figures to be feared but also admired for their cunning, bravery, and refusal to adhere to societal norms. The romanticization of pirates in these works reflected a shift in how pirates were perceived. While real pirates of the Golden Age had been ruthless criminals, the pirates of literature became symbols of freedom, rebellion, and the desire for adventure. The popularity of pirates in literature naturally transitioned to film, where pirates became larger-than-life figures in swashbuckling Hollywood blockbusters. Early pirate films like Captain Blood, 1935, starring Errol Flynn, and The Black Pirate, 1926, starring Douglas Fairbanks, helped to establish the pirate genre in cinema. These films portrayed pirates as dashing rogues who were both dangerous and charismatic, often casting them as heroic outlaws fighting against corrupt authorities or rival pirates. The pirate films of the early 20th century were heavily influenced by adventure novels and romanticized the life of the pirate, focusing on the excitement of treasure hunts, naval battles, and sword fights. The success of these films set the stage for future pirate adventures, with Errol Flynn in particular becoming synonymous with the pirate hero, thanks to his portrayal of dashing characters like Captain Blood. Pirates continued to feature in popular films throughout the 20th century, though the genre saw a decline in the latter half of the century. However, pirates returned to the spotlight in a major way with the release of Pirates of the Caribbean. The Curse of the Black Pearl in 2003. The film, inspired by the Disney theme park ride, introduced audiences to Captain Jack Sparrow, played by Johnny Depp. Sparrow, with his eccentric mannerisms, flamboyant style, and unpredictable behavior, became one of the most iconic pirate characters in modern cinema. Pirates of the Caribbean revived the pirate genre for a new generation, combining action, adventure, and supernatural elements with humor and romance. The success of the first film led to a popular franchise, with multiple sequels and spin-offs that explored the fantastical world of pirate mythology. Captain Jack Sparrow became a pop culture phenomenon, and the franchise's blend of historical piracy with fantasy elements ensured its lasting appeal. The success of Pirates of the Caribbean marked a new era for pirates in film. The franchise proved that pirate adventures could be entertaining for modern audiences, and it reinvigorated interest in the pirate genre across other forms of media. Pirates have also made a significant impact in television and video games, where the allure of treasure hunts, naval combat, and outlaw life continues to captivate audiences. One of the most critically acclaimed pirate television series is Black Sails, 2014-2017, a prequel to Treasure Island that explores the early lives of characters like Captain Flint and Long John Silver. The show combines historical events with fictional storytelling, giving viewers a gritty and realistic portrayal of life during the Golden Age of Piracy. Black Sails was praised for its complex characters, moral ambiguity, and the deep exploration of pirate culture. In the world of video games, pirates have become a popular theme in both action-adventure and strategy genres. Assassin's Creed IV, Black Flag, 2013, is one of the most successful pirate-themed video games, blending historical piracy with the fictional Assassin's Creed universe. The game allows players to captain their own pirate ship, engage in naval battles, and explore a vast open-world set during the Golden Age of Piracy. Sea of Thieves, 2018, an online multiplayer game, takes a more whimsical approach to piracy, allowing players to team up with friends to embark on treasure hunts, battle rival pirate crews, and sail the seas. Both television and video games have allowed pirates to remain relevant in the modern entertainment landscape, with new generations of fans discovering the thrill of pirate adventures. The enduring popularity of pirates in popular culture is tied to their representation as romantic figures who embody freedom, adventure, and rebellion. In books, films, and games, pirates are often portrayed as anti-heroes, characters who live outside the law but who are driven by a sense of justice, honor, or personal code. This romantic ideal has transformed the image of pirates from ruthless criminals into characters that audiences root for, despite their outlaw status. The pirates' desire for freedom, both from the oppressive laws of empires and from the constraints of society, resonates with audiences across generations. Pirates represent the ultimate rejection of authority, choosing a life of adventure and danger over the safety of conventional life. In popular culture, pirates are often seen as the last great adventurers, living on the edge of society and testing the boundaries of the known world. This romanticized view of pirates stands in contrast to the harsh realities of pirate life during the Golden Age. Real pirates faced danger, disease, and the constant threat of execution. However, the stories of their exploits, their defiance of authority, and their search for treasure have become symbols of freedom and rebellion in a world that often seeks to impose order. The legacy of pirates in popular culture shows no signs of fading. From Treasure Island to Pirates of the Caribbean, the stories of pirate adventures, hidden treasure, and life on the high seas continue to capture the imagination of audiences around the world. Pirates, with their larger-than-life personalities and daring exploits, have become mythic figures, embodying both the best and worst of human nature. Pirates' continued presence in popular culture speaks to their lasting appeal as symbols of adventure and freedom. While the real Golden Age of piracy may have ended centuries ago, the legend of pirates lives on, evolving with each new generation of storytellers and filmmakers who seek to keep the spirit of piracy alive. Chapter 12: The Legacy of Piracy. As the Golden Age of piracy came to a close, the impact of pirates on history, culture, and the imagination of people around the world endured. Though their reign over the seas was brief, pirates left an indelible mark on the global landscape, shaping everything from maritime law to modern storytelling. In this final chapter, we explore the lasting legacy of piracy, how pirates influenced the world beyond their time, and why their stories continue to captivate us. One of the most significant and lasting impacts of the Golden Age of piracy was its role in shaping modern maritime law. The actions of pirates forced nations to develop new legal frameworks for dealing with piracy, leading to the creation of international treaties and laws governing the seas. As piracy became a major threat to global trade, nations began to work together to protect shipping lanes and enforce order on the high seas. The British Admiralty courts, for example, were established to try pirates and enforce maritime law. These courts had the authority to try pirates captured on the high seas and sentence them to death or imprisonment. The trials of notorious pirates like Captain Kidd and Bartholomew Roberts set legal precedents that influenced how maritime crimes were prosecuted for centuries to come. Pirates also contributed to the development of anti-piracy agreements between nations. By the 19th century, international cooperation became key to combating piracy, and many of the principles established during the Golden Age of piracy, such as extradition and universal jurisdiction over pirates, are still in place today. Modern international law recognizes piracy as a crime that can be prosecuted by any nation, regardless of where the pirate was captured, a practice that dates back to the efforts to combat piracy in the 17th and 18th centuries. Pirates of the Golden Age had a profound impact on global commerce. By disrupting trade routes and attacking merchant ships, pirates contributed to the militarization of shipping and the development of convoy systems that would become standard practice for protecting valuable cargo. European nations invested heavily in naval power to safeguard their interests, leading to the growth of powerful navies like the British Royal Navy and the Spanish Armada. The constant threat of piracy also led to the creation of insurance policies for shipping. Merchants and ship owners needed to protect their investments from the possibility of pirate attacks, and thus marine insurance became a common practice. This development in commercial insurance was one of the many ways in which piracy spurred innovation and adaptation within global trade. Furthermore, pirates themselves were often intimately involved in the economies of the regions they frequented. Pirate havens like Nassau and Tortuga thrived on the commerce generated by piracy, with pirates trading their stolen goods for food, supplies, and luxury items. These pirate economies, though temporary, had a significant impact on local merchants and helped to shape the economies of the Caribbean and other regions where piracy was prevalent. As the Golden Age of piracy faded, the image of pirates began to take on a new, more romanticized form. In the centuries following the decline of piracy, pirates became symbols of rebellion, freedom, and adventure. The harsh realities of pirate life, disease, violence, and short, brutal careers were often overshadowed by the mythic qualities associated with piracy. This romanticization began in literature during the 19th century, with novels like Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island and J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan. These stories transformed pirates from ruthless criminals into daring adventurers, driven by the pursuit of treasure and the thrill of life on the open sea. The pirate hero became a beloved figure in popular culture, and pirates were no longer seen as mere villains, but as complex characters who defied authority and lived by their own code. The romantic image of pirates has persisted into the modern era, fueled by Hollywood films, television shows, and video games. Pirates are often depicted as anti-heroes, characters who break the rules of society but do so with charm, wit, and a sense of justice. This portrayal has helped to keep the legend of piracy alive, even as the real-life horrors of piracy are often forgotten. While the Golden Age of Piracy ended in the 18th century, piracy itself has never fully disappeared. In the 21st century, piracy has reemerged as a serious threat in certain parts of the world, particularly in regions like the Horn of Africa, the South China Sea, and the Gulf of Guinea. Modern pirates are often driven by economic desperation and operate in war-torn regions where law enforcement is weak or non-existent. Unlike the pirates of the Golden Age, modern pirates are typically not interested in treasure. Instead, they target cargo ships, tankers, and even cruise liners, seeking ransom for the crews they capture or stealing the valuable goods being transported. The rise of Somali piracy in the early 2000s brought global attention to the issue, as armed pirates attacked ships in the Indian Ocean and held crews hostage for millions of dollars in ransom. The international community has responded to modern piracy with coordinated naval patrols and anti-piracy missions, similar to the efforts made during the Golden Age. In some regions, piracy has been significantly reduced due to these efforts, but it remains a persistent problem in other parts of the world. Modern piracy serves as a reminder that the challenges faced by maritime nations during the Golden Age are still relevant today. While the motivations and methods may have changed, the underlying issues of economic inequality, lawlessness, and the vulnerability of global trade remain. The enduring fascination with pirates can be attributed to their ability to tap into universal human desires for adventure, freedom, and rebellion. Pirates represent the ultimate outsiders, living by their own rules and defying the systems of power that seek to control them. Whether seen as heroes or villains, pirates have come to symbolize the desire to escape from the constraints of society and live a life of independence and self-determination. This fascination is reflected in the ongoing popularity of pirate-themed books, movies, games, and even festivals. Pirate reenactments, costume events, and pirate tourism have become popular activities for those seeking to experience a taste of pirate life, if only for a day. The image of the pirate, with their skull and crossbones flag, cutlass, and treasure map, continues to captivate audiences young and old. Pirates have also become symbols of individualism and nonconformity, often celebrated for their refusal to submit to the authorities of their time. In this way, the legacy of pirates transcends their historical reality and becomes a metaphor for the human desire to break free from the limits imposed by society. The legacy of piracy is multifaceted. On one hand, pirates were ruthless criminals who disrupted trade, terrorized sailors, and committed heinous acts of violence. On the other hand, pirates have become symbols of adventure, rebellion, and the pursuit of freedom. The dual nature of piracy, both as a brutal reality and a romantic myth, continues to influence how we view the world today. The impact of the Golden Age of Piracy on maritime law, global commerce, and popular culture is undeniable. Pirates may have been outlaws, but their actions helped shape the modern world in ways that are still felt today. From the establishment of powerful navies to the creation of international anti-piracy treaties, the legacy of piracy has left an indelible mark on history. As long as there are stories to be told and adventures to be imagined, the legend of the pirate will live on, reminding us of a time when the seas were wild. The rules were made to be broken, and freedom was just a ship's voyage away. As the sun sets on this tale of adventure, danger, and discovery, we leave behind the world of the Golden Age of Piracy, a time when daring souls took to the seas in search of freedom, fortune, and glory. The pirates who sailed the high seas may have long since faded into the depths of history, but their stories continue to inspire and captivate. Their exploits, from the treasures they sought to the battles they fought, remain etched in the annals of maritime history, living on through the tales we tell. Pirates were more than just criminals. They were outlaws, explorers, and in some ways, even pioneers of their own brand of freedom. They navigated uncharted waters, carved out new ways of life, and defied the powers that sought to control them. Though many met brutal ends, executed at execution dock or perishing in fierce battles, their legends endured, fueling the imaginations of generations to come. As you drift into sleep, remember that these stories are not just relics of the past, but enduring symbols of the human spirit, the drive to rebel, to seek adventure, and to live beyond the constraints of ordinary life. The seas may be calm now, and the pirate ships long gone, but the allure of the unknown, the call of distant horizons, and the romance of freedom still beckon. With the stars above, just as they guided the pirates of old, may your own journey through history be one of peace, curiosity, and wonder. The seas of adventure are endless, and there is always another horizon to explore.